And I have to say, there wasn't an open primary per se. There weren't any primary debates. Joe Biden's name was the only name on the ballot in some states. The Democratic Party really discouraged anybody from running against him. And I think what we're hearing from voters now is many of them, until they saw the debate, didn't really have a firm grasp on the state of President Biden. And now they have true concerns.
So it was a contested primary, and indeed one of the candidates in that primary explicitly made the president's age his galvanizing issue, and voters rejected that argument and instead said that we want to take the incumbent who has defeated Donald Trump before, and we have confidence can defeat him again. Now, I agree, Elizabeth, that since the debate, constituents have newfound concerns, and it is incumbent upon the president to address those concerns and to make sure that Democrats have unity and conviction about the top of the ticket going forward, because next week, the conversation needs to stop being about Democratic conversations, and it needs to start being about Republican conversations about ditching their nominee, because Donald Trump refused yet again to accept the election results. Last time, that led to the death of police officers in the line of duty. He promised that he would hand Ukraine over to Russia. He has said that he wants to politicize the federal bureaucracy. This is a man who can't be trusted to govern. This is a man who a majority of Americans are desperate to be rid of.
Okay.
And the GOP now needs to look at their nominee with scrutiny and with moral clarity.
Well, the GOP is rallying firmly behind their nominee as of today, unlike in the Democratic Party, where there are open and public calls from within the party for President Biden to step down as the nominee. In that letter today to House Democrats, Biden was defiant, saying he's firmly committed to staying, but he has an approval rate of 36%. How can he win with numbers like that?
It needs to be a team sport. And that team sport needs to involve people like Secretary Raimondo talking about the economy and manufacturing and outcompeting China, and Pete Buttigieg talking about infrastructure investments and workforce training, and Kamala Harris about reproductive freedom and upholding the rule of law. This administration is going to go down as top 10 all time in terms of what it's delivered in its 4 years in power.
Right, but
not just taking an economy that was flat on its back and 15 million jobs, 18 million small business applications, but also restoring U.S. global leadership. And that story needs to be told. I agree, the president is not communicating that very powerfully, but others can.
Yeah, as you know, Congressman, this is an election for president, not an election for a committee to run the United States. Biden called into MSNBC this morning to vow he wasn't going anywhere. He said Friday night in that interview with ABC he would only quit if, quote, the Lord Almighty came down and told him to get out. But then he went on to say that the polls show he and Trump are neck and neck. That is not what the polls show. Are his advisors being clear with him on the state of this race?
Well, they should be, and we shouldn't be political science deniers. We should recognize that his favorables have dipped relative to 2020, that Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, these swing states are close or he is behind in them, and we've got ground to make up. Now, I think we can make that ground up. And the core reason why is because ultimately the best candidate we have to run against Donald Trump is Donald Trump himself. He is historically unpopular, and Americans don't want another 4 years of what he has to offer. And Democrats are going to be able to draw that strong and sharp contrast. We're going to get through this week, and we are going to have unity about the top of the ticket.
Do you anticipate those colleagues of yours in Congress are going to change their minds and come back and say, never mind, we didn't mean it when we called on him to step down?
I'm not going to speak for my colleagues. What I will say with great clarity and conviction, though, is that every single Democrat wants to beat Donald Trump. Everyone understands that that is the top priority. And ultimately, the person at the top of the ticket is going to have their support because it's going to be better than the alternative.
I do want to get your reaction to this reporting in today's New York Times. The comeback kid mythology that Mr. Biden has built over a half-century in politics is colliding with the new reality where he is not being held up as a fighter who overcomes obstacles, but is accused by his critics of putting his own ego ahead of the country. If Democrats like you really believe that Trump poses an existential threat to democracy, why are you trusting that Biden is the best one to beat him?
Because Democrats, unlike Republicans, believe in free and fair elections, and 14 million Democrats went to the polls with alternatives and decided that Joe Biden was the best man to lead us forward. And because Joe Biden's track record of president is superlative. He has rallied the free world to the defense of Ukraine. He has put us in a stronger position relative to China for the first time in the 21st century. He has invested in infrastructure and manufacturing. The man has a lot to campaign on, and even if he is not as eloquent as he once was, those records speak for themselves.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.